we believe in someone, it helps them find an inner strength they didn't know they had. We believe because of who we got. The greatest motivation when you're connected, right, is not wanting to let each other down. We believe in who we are and who we are as a team. Belief is a fucking powerful thing.
Y'all turn me into a believer.
We work our ass off for this.
Every person doing their job. You doing your job. You doing your job.
Do you believe? I believe.
Gravity pulls against you. Everything pulls against you. And I think that's what this team is going through right now. And I think once we fight through that, push through that, we're going to be fine. We're going to be right where we need to be.
You have to believe.
Yeah.
Believe. Yeah. I believe. Do you believe?
Let's just do.
We welcome you to the final Eagles pregame show of the 2023-24 regular season as the Eagles have the opportunity to win the NFC East today with a win and a Cowboys loss, but they need a win no matter what over the New York Giants today. This is the SeatGeek Eagles pregame show here on Philly Sports Reports. My name is Ben Goldstein. I'm joined by Sam Hine. Sam, the long-awaited end of the season. The regular season is here. Beginning of the season, a lot of us did not think this game would matter, and well, here we are.
Yeah, it's crazy that we're actually at week 18. It feels like just yesterday that this season started. The NFL is the best because you wait so long to have it here. It's the best time of the year, and then it always sucks because it goes way too fast, and pretty soon we'll be in the off season, but hopefully that won't be too soon for the Eagles. But yeah, like you said, coming into this season, not a lot of people, especially us, thought that this last game of the season would even matter for the Eagles as they were playing the Giants, but turns out that it seems like every last game of the season against the Giants the last couple of years will matter for playoff seeding, and it's crazy how we were a 10-1 team and now is looking to hopefully win the division, which most likely be in the 5 seed. It's amazing over these last few weeks how this season has turned.
Yeah, the Buccaneers are the likely opponent next week for the Eagles. They're winning over the Panthers. The Panthers have had many opportunities to get into the end zone and get some points, and they have failed every single time. So it's going to be looking like Bucs, Eagles next week. However, the Eagles could be playing the 7th seed next week, but they would need a lot. The Cowboys are in Washington, and what the Eagles want to do relies on that game. If they want to win the division, they need a Cowboys loss to the 4-12 Washington Commanders, who are going to fire their head coach in this week. And the Eagles need to win. However, if the Cowboys win or the Eagles lose, the Eagles are stuck with the 5 seed, and it'll be the 19th season with a different NFC East champion. So with that, it looks like the Eagles are going to start their starters. They are going to start their starters today. There's a few guys they're resting. But for the most part, it's going to be the Eagles starters today. Sam, do you agree with that move from Sirianni to start the starters today?
Yeah, the starters absolutely need to be starting and playing the majority of this game. Just from a first standpoint of that they have been playing super bad over the last few weeks. They've been playing very poorly. So just from that standpoint of trying to get them in a little bit of a rhythm, trying to get maybe a little bit of confidence back going into the playoffs, I think that's super important. But just from the standpoint of the Eagles can still have a home playoff game, they can still win this division. The Lions are in a tight game right now with Minnesota, Dallas, horrible road team. In the same situation last year, the Cowboys lost to Washington. Not the exact same situation as the Eagles were in control of their own destiny. The situations were flipped a little bit. But we all know Dallas chokes under pressure. It wouldn't be the most surprising thing in the world if Washington players kind of rally around their head coach, Ron Rivera, and decide that they're actually going to try for this game and try to, spoil Dallas a little bit, but on Rivera's way out. So I think that you have to play the starters in this game. Could you imagine the backlash and the outrage if the Eagles started Marcus Mariota in this game, if they started Britton Covey at wide receiver, and then the Cowboys go out and lose, and we lose to the Giants, and we had an opportunity to possibly be the 2 or the 3 seed, I think Nick Sirianni would be fired before the playoffs even started if that happened. So or at least the fans would be calling for him to be fired. That's for sure. So I think just from the first standpoint of that, they need to get try at least to get a little bit of a groove going. And then there is a real possibility that this thing can happen. Do I think it's going to happen that Dallas is going to lose? Definitely not. I think Dallas is going to win. But would it be the craziest thing in the world if Dallas lost? I mean, crazier things have happened in the last day of seasons. We've seen it across baseball. We saw it back in 2007 when the Phillies were trying to make the playoffs. They needed the Mets to collapse down the stretch. They got it. Crazy things happen on the last day games of the season, last day of the season, and the Eagles should definitely be playing their starters today. However, I mean, if the Cowboys are up big at halftime, I think we should definitely pull them out. There's no reason to risk injury, especially up in MetLife, one of the worst fields in the NFL. If the Cowboys are up big, and we already know who and where we're going to be playing at. But as long as it's a close game, starters need to be in there.
Yeah, the Buccaneers just wrapped up their game. They have won the NFC South. The Eagles, if the Cowboys win in Washington or the Eagles lose today, they'll be in Tampa Bay again for the first round of the playoffs next week. They played Tom Brady a few years back in 2021 in the first round of the playoffs. They got killed. So obviously, with the starters starting today, that MetLife Field turf is a major injury risk, and it's just you got to pray at this point that nobody ends their season. The Eagles are already down. Devontae Smith, he is out today. We'll get to that in a little bit. DeAndre Swift is out with an illness. There's a couple guys out for the Eagles. Vontae Maddox is a little banged up still, so just got to hope that nothing bad happens today. So we'll get to the starting quarterback matchup. It's Tyrod Taylor and Jalen Hurts. No more Tommy Cutlets for the Giants. His 50 minutes of fame are over. So Jalen Hurts looked better last week. His record's 11-5, 3,803 passing yards, 66.1 completion percentage, 23 touchdowns, 14 interceptions, a passer rating of 91.0, 601 rushing yards, 15 rushing touchdowns. The Eagles are without Devontae Smith and DeAndre Swift today. Swift was questionable throughout the week. He is going to be out. And Devontae Smith, obviously with that ankle sprain, he is out as well. Both should be good for next week in Tampa or at home, wherever the game is, which will be determined today. So Hurts and the Eagles offense looked better last week against Arizona, but I don't really want to talk about that game. So today, what should we expect from the Eagles offense and Jalen Hurts?
So I know you said you don't want to talk about that game, but I kind of do want to talk about that game a little bit from an offensive standpoint, because I feel like that game kind of encapsulates a bigger problem that's been going on all season long that I feel like people don't want to talk about. I've been here talking all year about how I think that Hurts in this offense hasn't looked the same, and I do put some of that blame on Jalen Hurts when I feel like a lot of people just kind of let him skeeve by any kind of complaints or any kind of criticism because they blame it all on the coaching staff. And while, yes, the coaching staff has not been great so far this season, all season long, Brian Johnson has not done a good job of coordinator. Nick Sirianni has done a bad job of adjusting his offense to adjustments made by opposing defenses. I do think that Hurts has gotten by without getting a lot of blame this season, and I think that it's time to start talking about that, because when you just look at it as a whole, if it was any other quarterback or any quarterback of a team far away, let's just say the Giants or whatever, and if they were 10-1 and all of a sudden they fell to 11-5, the quarterback would be getting a lot of the blame. And that's just not the case here. And I think one of the biggest things going on all season long that we kind of saw last week, that was a problem against the Cardinals, is that Jalen Hurts in this offense has not been able to close games out. The defense deserves a lot of blame for last week. They deserve a lot of blame for the weeks past, but the defense was bailing this offense out all season long. So I think it's kind of unfair that when the offense doesn't bail the defense out, the offense doesn't get any blame, but when the defense bails the offense out, the defense still gets blamed. So this team would not be where it is right now if it wasn't for the defense. The games like Washington, both Washington games, the Patriots game, the Chiefs game, the Bills game, the Eagles offense was able to put up points, but then the defense made the stops at the end of the games to kind of win those games for them. And then the Jets, the Seahawks, and the Cardinals were all losses that could have been avoided if the Eagles offense were able to put the team away. Last week we saw against Arizona, Jonathan Gannon did an onside kick because he knew that the Eagles offense was not going to be able to score a touchdown even with a short field. He ended up being right. They went 3 and out, ended up kicking a field goal. Cardinals went down the field and scored. Yes, obviously the defense was extremely bad on that drive, but the Eagles go down and score a touchdown. If they can even take up a lot of clock before scoring a field goal, that drive never happens. Seattle game, the only reason Seattle wins that game is Jalen Hurts throws 2 interceptions in the fourth quarter, turning the ball over to Seattle, giving them multiple chances to score a touchdown. And it's worth noting that on those multiple chances, only one of them resulted in a touchdown for Seattle. So the defense was able to make some stops there. Jalen Hurts had 4 turnovers in the Jets game, where all he needed to do was just salt the game away at the end and they would have won that game. Instead, he had another turnover. The Jets go down, they score. So while the defense has let up some late drives in games this year, a lot of it has been caused by the offense. One of the best things that this offense did last year was to be able to salt games away in the fourth quarter. You would see them run the ball. You would see them think and dunk down the field. They'd be able to get field goals, touchdowns, and leave teams with no time left on the clock. They've not been able to do that at all this season. A lot of that, yes, is on the coaching staff because they've been extremely inconsistent. They've been extremely predictable. But this offense hasn't lived up to the expectations either. I think Jalen leaves the pocket way too early on his dropbacks. For whatever reason, maybe it's because they don't trust to put him in this situation. They only run plays out of the shotgun, which just makes them even more predictable. And a lot of people will say that that's because the coaches don't want Jalen to be in the eye or in under center. But that's got to be an indictment on the quarterback because they don't believe that he can run plays out of those formations. So everyone says the offense is so predictable. Well, maybe the offense is so predictable because the quarterback is only comfortable running plays out of certain formations, which limits your playbook. We've seen Jalen not run plays out of the eye or under center all his career, back to high school, college, all that kind of stuff. So he's obviously not comfortable with it, but with that part of his game, it really limits what you can call offensively. The coaches obviously do need to be able to create more plays out of that formation if that's all they're going to use, but it's pretty obvious. We can all see it, what plays are going to be running as soon as he, motions a running back out wide. We all know it's a quarterback draw. We all know what plays are coming. So it's definitely on both, but I just think this offense has really flown under the radar of criticism so far this season. And I mean, even games like Dallas and San Francisco, those would have been way different games if the Eagles offense even showed up. Yes, we probably still win those games, but it would have been way closer if the Eagles weren't just going 3 and out, turning the ball over, giving the ball right back to the San Francisco and Dallas offenses. So, defense is obviously a major problem, but I just think the Eagles offense is flying way under the radar on criticism this year, and it's up to them to carry the team if they're going to do anything in the postseason.
Yeah, well, we'll get to an interview from an offensive player later in this show, and maybe that'll turn the season around, but it's been a dreadful season on both sides of the ball. Speaking of dreadful seasons, the New York Giants came in as a team that was maybe going to make the playoffs, just signed their quarterback to a huge deal. Well, they're sitting here 5-11 and looking to play spoiler with Tyrod Taylor as their starting quarterback today. His record this season, he is 1-8 this season in games he's played in. 1,044 passing yards, 62.8 completion percentage, 4 touchdowns, 2 interceptions, 87.2 passer rating. The Eagles are resting Fletcher Cox today. He's not injured, but he's older, so he's going to get some rest today. Some much-deserved and needed rest for Fletch heading into the postseason. The Eagles' defense had a tough time with the Giants' offense a few weeks ago on Christmas. Could this be a get-right game for the Eagles' defense, even though I feel like we've been saying that for the past month?
I definitely don't think it's a get-right game for the Eagles' defense. The game really changed against the Giants on Christmas Day when they put in Tyrod Taylor, and I think that game kind of jump-started Taylor a little bit. Last week against the Rams, he threw for 319 yards and a touchdown. The Giants came really close to winning that game. He brought them all the way back on Christmas Day, including a 75 30-ish yard bomb to Slayton for a touchdown. So while Tyrod Taylor has not won a lot of games this season, I mean, he was benched for Tommy DeVito. He does still have a little bit left in his arm. He seems to be playing better over the last few weeks. And I mean, this game is really going to come down to if the Eagles can stop the run or not, in my opinion. Because, yeah, Tyrod Taylor is going to be able to throw the ball a little bit on this Eagles beat-up secondary with Slay not being back yet. But the way the Cardinals really diced us up last week was with the run. James Conner ran for over 120 yards, and then Michael Carter ran for 60-plus yards, which is just unacceptable from a guy who's been cut multiple times this season. For him to get 60-plus yards on you is pretty embarrassing. The Eagles' run defense has been super bad over the last few weeks. Really, they went from number 1 in the NFL to all the way down by the bottom over the last few weeks. And Fletcher Cox being out is definitely going to affect that because besides Jalen Carter, he's been their other best defensive tackle. So it's going to be interesting. I think Tyrod, like I said, he's going to be able to throw the ball a little bit, but his record speaks for himself as a Giants quarterback this year. He does turn the ball over a little bit, did have a turnover last week against the Rams, but I think this game is really going to come down to whether or not the Eagles can stop the run and then, try to make Tyrod make a mistake here or there.
Yeah, you talked about the run. This could be Saquon Barkley's final game as a Giant. So we'll see what happens with that later in the season. But the Eagles are going to have to defend him for maybe the last time as a Giant. Let's move on to the notable matchups today. It's kind of the last game of the Giants season. They're kind of out of it. Not kind of, they are out of it. The Eagles still fighting for a little bit. What are some notable matchups today?
Yeah, so my first one, I got two guys going up against one. I got Sterling Shepard and Darius Slayton versus James Bradbury. I think that Sterling Shepard, it's probably his last game in New York as well. He's been posting a lot over social media about, being kind of emotional because this is probably not going to be back. And then we saw Darius Slayton really torch the Eagles defense last week or 2 weeks ago when he got in there, when Tyrod got in there. I do think that with their two speed guys, they're really going to try to match up them against Bradbury because they know they can take advantage of Bradbury losing a step this season. That's going to be a big matchup to see if Bradbury can keep them in front because if not, Tyrod's not afraid to throw it over their heads. Next one I got is Jordan Davis versus John Michael Schmitz, their center. I've talked about it before, like I just said, but I think Saquon and slowing him down is really going to be the key to the Eagles winning this game. And Jordan Davis has gotten a lot of heat over the last week or two, I would say, because a lot of big all-22 people have been kind of eyeing him out of why is this Eagles run defense so bad and what's kind of the problem there. And a lot of people have found the problem to be Jordan Davis. Jordan Davis was drafted in the first round of last year's draft to be the future run stuffer of this defense. Some people, including myself, thought that if you're going to take a defensive tackle that high, you need him to be able to rush the passer like Jalen Carter has, who's going to win Defensive Rookie of the Year. And Jalen Carter kind of showing why that's so important. But Jordan Davis cannot rush the passer, and he can't stop the run either. I mean, I know a lot of people have been defending Jordan Davis out there, saying that he's creating gaps for the linebackers to make plays. But at the end of the day, Jordan Davis needs to be able to make more plays at the line of scrimmage. That's great if he's creating lanes for the linebackers to make plays, but I need to see him make more plays at the line of scrimmage before I can really feel comfortable with him as being the future run stuffer of this defense. Because I mean the numbers show for itself. This run defense is horrible, and I've seen some of the clips floating around there of him, and I don't want to question his effort or anything like that, but it definitely looks like he is just getting overmatched out there, and it's going to be a big matchup today to see if he kind of takes that criticism to heart and has a big game against Saquon. Because if Jordan Davis is letting him get into the second level, that's a disaster for this Eagles defense. That leads me into my next notable matchup which is Saquon versus Shaq Leonard and Zach Cunningham. I think it's massive that Zach Cunningham's going to be back for the Eagles today. Like I said, Saquon, he gets in that second level. He's making people miss. He's taking those 5 to 8 yard gains for 15, 20, 25. So it's definitely going to be big to have Cunningham back because he was a great tackler. Shaq Leonard's been super up and down since he's came here. He had a great game actually the first time against the Giants. He led the team in tackles, had his best game as an Eagle. So let's hope that he can do that again, as the Eagles did a decent job of slowing down Saquon. They allowed him to only rush for about 80 yards. So I think the linebackers are going to be massive today because I do think Saquon's going to be getting into that second level. And he's going into that third level, it's going to be a long day for the Eagles defense.
Yeah, let's hope that doesn't happen. For the let's move on to our sponsor. For the final time of the regular season, SeatGeek is sponsoring the Eagles pregame show here on Philly Sports Reports, as they have done all season. Thank you to SeatGeek again for sponsoring. SeatGeek is the best and easiest way to get your tickets to anything: sports, concerts, comedy shows, whatever. All you got to do, download SeatGeek app. Download the SeatGeek app. Select your event. Get your seats. Green dots mean good. Bad dots mean bad. Red dots mean bad. And you can save $20 off your first SeatGeek purchase with code Philly Sports Report. Again, that's $20 off your first purchase of SeatGeek with code Philly Sports Reports. Click on the link in the description on YouTube, in the bio, in Instagram and Twitter. Thank you to SeatGeek for sponsoring. We move on to our SeatGeek Standout Stars. Oh, by the way, you can save $20 on Eagles playoff tickets if you want to fly to Tampa, or you know what, we might have a home game. You can save $20 off on an Eagles playoff ticket. You can save $20 off any ticket. Sam Hyde saved $20 off Sixers Magic tickets. And he's going to do it again when they go back to Orlando. So thank you, SeatGeek, for sponsoring. Sam, SeatGeek Standout Stars, one final time this regular season.
Yeah, well, speaking of using that SeatGeek code to get playoff tickets, if the Eagles are down here in Tampa, I'll be using that SeatGeek code again to go to the Eagles playoff game. So, I'm obviously hoping we win the division, everybody. So, I'm not rooting for the Eagles to lose the division and lose or whatever, but it would be a good consolation prize if I can use that, or have my girlfriend use that SeatGeek code, because I already used it, to cash in for some Eagles playoff tickets. But I'm going with two running backs today for the Standout Stars. Saquon Barkley, like you said, it's probably his last game as a Giant, and kind of underrated. It's kind of fallen under the radar this season, but Saquon is having a down year this year. He's only at about 918 yards, I believe. So not at that 1,000-yard mark yet. When a contract year for Saquon, he can't be happy that he hasn't hit that 1,000-yard mark. And I do think he's going to really try to get at least to that big counting number to, make it look better for teams that are trying to sign him this offseason, for him to show that, hey, I'm still playing as well as I have been. I need a big contract, all that. And, the Eagles' run defense has been really bad. And I just think Saquon's going to have a big day today. And then Boston Scott, I think that he is going to make up for not scoring against the Giants on Christmas Day. I talked about it a little bit earlier, but I do think that the Eagles are going to rest their starters at some point, because I do think Dallas is going to be up big against Washington. So I think that Marcus Mariota is going to be handing the ball off to Boston Scott, and he needs to make up for losing everyone's bets on Christmas Day. He needs to have a big day. And I think in the second half, all of us who are going to stay and watch this second half, when the Eagles rest their starters, hopefully they don't have to rest their starters, but if they do, I think we'll be watching the Giant Killer kind of run around MetLife in that second half.
Yeah, he didn't score at all. It was very surprising on Christmas Day. But he always scores multiple in New York. He kills the Giants even more in New York, so hopefully that'll happen today. We'll get to the bets in a little bit, but thank you to SeatGeek for sponsoring the SeatGeek Standout Stars. The inactives today, we went over them a little earlier for the Eagles. Devontae Smith is inactive. Tyler Steen is inactive. Darius Slay is inactive. Once again, he probably will be good for next week. Tanner McKee is inactive, and Fletcher Cox is a healthy scratch. DeAndre Swift is also inactive. So for the Giants, Benton Whiteley, he's inactive. John Michael Schmitz is inactive. Timmy Howe is inactive. Paris Campbell is inactive, and Devontae Banks is also inactive. So there are your inactives for the Eagles and Giants.
So of course, one of my notable matchups is Jordan Davis versus John Michael Schmitz, and then now he's inactive. So I think that puts even more pressure on Jordan Davis to be able to take advantage of their backup center, because John Michael Schmitz is a pretty good player. So definitely, hopefully Jordan Davis, that'll give him a little extra boost he needs to dominate that D-line or that O-line today.
Yeah, that would be great. So for the Eagles, those inactives, those four starters, Darius Slay's been active for a few weeks, but those three starters, especially Devontae Smith, Fletcher Cox, and DeAndre Swift, Eagles offense going to be wounded a little bit today, Sam.
Yeah, it definitely sucks, especially a day like today where you're going to try to get out of here with no injuries, having DeAndre Swift inactive. They're going to need to run the ball today, and having Gainwell and Scott as your two primary running backs isn't exactly ideal. And then I think, obviously Devontae Smith is a great player, so having to put Quez Watkins in his spot, we all know bad things happen when you throw the ball. Bad things happen when you throw the ball to Quez Watkins. So look at Julio today a little bit, maybe getting a little bit more involved in the offense. Dallas Goedert's definitely going to get some more targets today. Britton Covey might get some snaps at wide receiver today, so that'll be fun to see for him. But we just got to hope that Devontae is going to be back for the playoffs. I am against resting the starters for this game, but anyone who has any kind of injury, any knick-knack, any whatever, they need to be sat today. So I'm okay with it as long as they're back for the playoffs. That's all that really matters at this point.
Yeah, and one guy that is active today, that's been inactive all season, is Rashad Penny, with DeAndre Swift being inactive. So maybe we'll see some more from Penny, which we've seen none from the season. But hopefully, maybe we'll see some from Penny today. He can try and prove himself. But man, money went to him, and he has been inactive for every game. So it's kind of a shame what we've seen from Rashad Penny this year. It sucks, but it is what it is. I think if he played every game and he was healthy, especially in Seattle, I think he could have been something, but it stinks what it's come to. Your gamblers are us bets today. The Eagles, surprisingly, the line is low, -4.5. The over-under is 42, and Sam has some locks of the day. Thank you to the Gamblers RS Podcast for sponsoring this part of the show. Go listen to the Gamblers RS Podcast on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, or wherever you listen to your podcast. Sam, what are your bets today?
So I feel like it's hard to really put a lot of locks out there today because, like I've kind of talked about all show long, I do think that the Eagles are going to be resting some starters in the second half of this game. But I do like the over in this game. I think it's going to be a little bit more high scoring than Vegas does, just by a little bit. I like the Giants with the points. I think it's going to be another close game. I mean, every single game the Eagles play is close. The Eagles were the first team in NFL history to be 10-1 and not have a victory of over 14 or more points. So any game that's close, every game has been close, and I don't think this one's going to be any different. And then it didn't happen on Christmas Day, but I'm still riding it. I put him as a standout star. Boston Scott, anytime touchdown, lock it in.
A little news around the NFL. The Jacksonville Jaguars have been eliminated from the playoffs. Doug Peterson has just lost, so they're eliminated. The Pittsburgh Steelers are into the playoffs, and the Bills have also clinched the postseason, and the Houston Texans, what a story, are the AFC South champions. So that's pretty cool. Sucks for Doug Peterson. I mean, they were 8-3, and now they're not even going to the playoffs. That sucks.
Could have been us.
Don't want to think about that. Let's move on to A.J. Brown. Earlier this week, Brown didn't talk to the media for a couple of weeks. He announced on Twitter, or X, whatever it's called, that he is talking. And he had a little press conference. It was a long one. What did you make from his press conference? And is it saving the season like people are thinking it's going to?
Yeah, so I think that all the A.J. Brown, since he talked and took accountability, it is all great. We all think the coaches have done a bad job this season, but A.J. did the right thing as a team captain by standing up there and taking all the accountability on himself. I think it was the right thing to do, and it was definitely a good move. As someone who wears the C on his chest, definitely gained a lot of respect for A.J. Brown, as, A.J. Brown coming in here and then kind of showing up a little bit with, some kind of frustrations on the sidelines and stuff like that. I feel like he got a unfairly bad rep a little bit, and I think that him kind of coming out and saying this kind of just showed really what kind of leader he is and exactly why his teammates voted him a team captain. But the people out there that are saying that him talking and taking accountability on the players, not the coaches, for, playing poorly over the last few weeks, well, I do think it's true. By saying it's going to save the season is kind of ridiculous to me. I mean, like I said, it's good that he did it. I'm glad that he did it, but I don't think him talking is going to – I don't think if the Eagles turn this around, it's going to be because A.J. Brown went out and spoke to the media and took accountability. The only way that this thing turns around is if the players and the coaches, get their heads out of their butts and start playing better and coaching better situational football. So I just think that all that talk about, oh, he saved the season, the Eagles are going to go on a run now just because he talked. Like, yeah, they might start playing better, but I don't think it's because he talked. I do think that him setting up a players only meeting is definitely a good thing. Sometimes people do it, sometimes teams do it a little bit too early, but I do like how he has kind of taken over that leadership role of one of the younger guys, because these guys, Kelsey, Lane, BG, Fletch, they're not going to be here for too much longer. And Jalen's a very quiet leader. He's more of a lead by example guy. So the Eagles need younger, louder, bigger voice leaders in the locker room. And obviously AJ's not going anywhere. He's second best wide receiver in the league, and he's going to be here for a long time. So I think it's really important that he kind of put all this together and showed that he wants to be a leader of this team now and going forward. But just by him talking, just by him doing this, I don't really think it's going to, I think that a lot of fans, and rightfully so, it's always good to be positive. They're just hoping and looking for any glimpse or glimmer of hope to just kind of jump right back on the Eagles bandwagon and, put their Eagles hoodies back on and be all in on this team, and we're winning the Super Bowl and all that stuff. And it's more than okay to feel that way. It's more fun to be positive and going into all these games in a positive way. But I just don't think that him speaking and taking accountability is going to be the sole reason that, this season will turn around, if this season will even ever turn around.
Yeah, I mean, taking accountability, I could take accountability right now for not posting somebody's article, and it doesn't really make up for anything. So It is what it is. The team meeting might help, but him talking isn't going to do anything. I really wouldn't make much of this. But
yeah, one thing, the biggest takeaway from his press conference, actually, I think, is when he talked about the end of the Seattle game, because Brian Johnson was taking a ton of heat for his play call, where instead of going for the field goal, Jalen Hurts decided to throw the ball deep to A.J. Brown, ended up in an interception. The Eagles ended up losing that game. A lot of people said that, it was Brian Johnson's play call. Why would he do that? What is he doing? Blah, blah, blah. But some people said, and they saw that Kenny Gainwell was open and said that it was Jalen's fault. And AJ said that a play call was called, and him and Jalen Hurts decided to change the play, and they went rogue. That was his quote. He said they went rogue, and they decided to change the play call. And I think that is extremely concerning, because he does take accountability for everything. And in his in-person meeting or players-only meeting, he said that we need to trust the coaches. Well, obviously you guys didn't trust the coaches, because whatever they called, you guys thought that you had a better idea of what to call in that situation, and you ended up being wrong. So, and I think, from your $250 million quarterback, if he's going to call a play there, he needs to have better situational football awareness than to know that you don't need to take a deep shot there. You need to get in the field goal range with Jake Elliott. So I think that was extremely concerning, and I feel like nobody's talking about that part of the press conference. Everyone's just talking about, pie in the sky, oh, he took accountability, so everything's great, instead of actually listening to that part of what he said and really thinking about it of, these guys maybe don't really trust this coaching staff, and if they don't, that's a huge concern. And also, why are you going rogue? And if you were going to go rogue, why are you calling that play in that situation? It doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, I think I went rogue a couple weeks ago too, so I don't really blame him. But you mentioned Jake Elliott. I want to talk about a couple Pro Bowl selections. Obviously, the Pro Bowl selections came out this week. A couple Eagles made it. The obvious guys. And I like the video that they posted. I don't even know why you would post that video with everybody. Like, they announced the Pro Bowlers and nobody had a reaction. I thought that video was hilarious. And I don't know why they would post. If I were the Eagles social media team, I would not have even bothered posting that, because that is a horrible, horrible look. But Jake Elliott, not a first team, not a starter in the Pro Bowl. That's ridiculous, Sam.
Yeah, it is pretty ridiculous. Jake Elliott's up there as one of the best kickers in the NFL. Right now in the league, there are a lot of really good kickers, but this team would not be anywhere close to where they are right now if it wasn't for Jake Elliott. Probably the biggest reason that this team has a playoff spot locked up right now is because of Jake Elliott. He's won multiple NFC Special Teams Player of the Week this season. So he definitely got missed. He was the first alternate, so technically he was the second best kicker in the NFC this year. But it was ridiculous. I mean, hopefully it doesn't matter because none of the Eagles will hopefully go to the Pro Bowl. But it's definitely a big slight against Jake.
Yeah, I doubt that no Eagles will be at the Pro Bowl. But anyway, let's move back to the game happening in about 20 minutes. Eagles-Giants, Week 18. The NFC East Championship might be on the line. Keys to the game, Sam. We don't know how this one's going to go. Rest the starters, play the starters, whole game. We'll see. What are your keys?
The biggest key, my first key, is to leave this game healthy. Winning the game is obviously most important, but second most important is to leave this game healthy. The Eagles cannot afford to lose anyone going into this playoff run. So that's the biggest thing, is making sure that everyone plays a clean game, leaving healthy, and we have just about the whole squad rolling into the playoffs. Talked about it a bunch today, but stopping and slowing down Saquon Barkley. If this Giants offense is going to really do anything today, it's going to start with the running game. And I think Saquon's going to try to show out, and it's probably his last game as a Giant. And then I talked about it earlier in my kind of rant about the Eagles offense, but the Eagles offense, if they are still in this game in the fourth quarter, need to put the Giants away. Enough of this turning the ball over in the fourth quarter, enough of these 3-and-outs in the fourth quarter, enough of these short drives that don't result in anything in the fourth quarter. You need to step on a team's throat in the fourth quarter and need to put them away, because this defense is not good enough to hold up a whole game without giving up a late touchdown drive. If the Eagles are going to be in this game, I think it's going to be a tight one, or at least somewhat tight, where the Giants can make it a game. You need to step on their throats, and you need to put the game away in the fourth quarter.
Yeah, those are your keys. Thank you. And we move on now to the FOCO, Sam Hine Fit Check. Thank you to FOCO for sponsoring the Sam Hine Fit Check. Save 10% off any FOCO purchase at that link right there. It's in the description. It's in the links in the bios on all social media, Sam. One final time of the regular season. What are we doing for the FOCO Fit Check?
So I found this jersey at a Goodwill in Baltimore, Maryland, coming home from a Orioles game. Just stopped to get gas, ran into a Goodwill, and randomly found this Eagles jersey. But it's one of my best thrift finds. I think it is a old early 2000s number 22 Asante Samuel white jersey. I think the Eagles white jerseys are definitely one of their most underrated jerseys. I love their white jerseys. Nobody really makes them. They don't really make them in a lot of players, so they're super hard to find. I was super lucky to find this one. Obviously, Asante was a great cornerback for the Eagles, and my name is Sam, so having Samuel on the back always adds a little bit of humor to it as well. But I was one of the most random Eagles jersey finds I've ever had in a Baltimore, Maryland Goodwill, but I'm happy to have it.
Yeah, that's kind of a random one. Thank you to FOCO for sponsoring. Maybe if the Eagles get a little later in these playoffs, maybe we'll get some FOCO stuff, rock some FOCO on these lives. I don't know if we're doing it next week, but we'll see what happens. So thank you to FOCO for sponsoring. We move on to one of the tougher game predictions we're going to have this season. It's not so tough because it's hard to pick your predictions. It's just tough because it gets to a point where who cares? So Sam, what's your prediction for today's game?
So I've been fighting myself even up to right now about who I think is going to win this game, because like I've mentioned a lot of times, I do think the Eagles starters will not be in this game in the second half, but I do think it would be very Eagles if their backups came in and played super well and then had everyone kind of freaking out. But I don't think the Giants are going to – I think it's going to be a close game, but like I said, I think the backups are going to be in there. I think the Eagles backups are going to do a decent job. And I don't want to end the season on a bad note, the regular season on a bad note. So I'll pick the Eagles to win. I'll say they're going to win 24-20.
Yeah, I don't even, at this point, for me, it doesn't even matter if the Eagles win this game, as long as Dallas loses. If Dallas loses, I think the Eagles win. But I just don't see, you can never count out a Dallas choke job. But it's the 4-12 Washington Commanders. I highly doubt Dallas is losing, and I either need a Dallas loss or Dallas to be up big at halftime so the Eagles can take the starters out, because I'm more concerned about nobody getting hurt than winning this game today. So I'm not even going to have a prediction because I didn't come up with one, because I'm just so lost in what's going on with this team right now. But I just hope Dallas maybe loses and the Eagles might win, and it'd be fun to have a home playoff game. So we'll see what happens. And Sam, anything else you got for us? I mean, we're about 14 minutes away from kickoff. Anything you want to touch on before we end here? Kind of a sober end.
Well, I guess since we may not have a show next week, if the Eagles are in Tampa, I guess I'll just ask, who you think is the Eagles? What do you think is the better matchup for the Eagles? Because I think this is an interesting question. Because obviously, if you take the home and away portion out of it, would you rather play the Rams or would you rather play the Bucs? Because those are probably the two teams the Eagles would play if everything stays the same.
I mean, if taking away the home and away, I think the Bucs are the better opponent, but I think the Eagles have a much better shot at winning at home. I mean, you see it in the playoffs at home. The Philadelphia sports teams just don't lose at home in the playoffs outside of the 76ers, who just seem to always lose in the second round no matter where they are. They could be in China and lose, but it's just the Eagles are not winning on the road in the postseason, but they have a much better chance at losing it and winning at home. So, and also I think I would rather lose to the Bucs than get killed by the Niners. The divisional round, I just don't even want to watch that game. That'll be so unwatchable and just hurt so bad to just get stomped on. So I would rather play the Bucs taking away the home and away, but
Eagles 49ers in the second round is disaster scenario, just written all over it. But I mean, obviously the home game, you want that more, but I think something that's interesting too about the home game is this team over the last few weeks has not played well at home, and I think they really feel the pressure of being at home. And I mean, if we both think they're not going to go and make the Super Bowl, I don't think they would lose to the Rams at home, but I definitely would rather play the Bucs. But I think that if we do have a home playoff game, I think it'd be a little interesting just because the pressure of being at home I feel like the stadium would be super tight because we're just all so mad at them right now, and everything's just so weird, so bad between the fan base and the team and all this stuff. There's just so much tension right now, I feel like. So it would definitely be a weird atmosphere. Obviously it's a playoff game, so people would be excited, but going into that playoff game with no real thought that they're going to actually make the Super Bowl, it'd just be weird to see how juiced up the fan base would be, you know what I mean? Because I feel like last year going into the Giants game, everyone thought that we were going to win the Super Bowl. Everyone thought we were going to go to the Super Bowl. So that stadium was electric, both those games. This year, it's nobody really thinks that. I mean, it's the Eagles fans. Obviously, they're going to be crazy, but, it's just – I think it's something interesting to, kind of play around because most likely they're going to Tampa and then going to San Francisco to get their doors blown off. But it's going to be, if they have to go to Detroit, I'll say this though: if they win today and the Cowboys lose and they win the division, I think they might get to the NFC Championship game because I don't trust that Detroit team in the playoffs. I don't trust Jared Goff in the playoffs at all.
So wait, would we go to Detroit or would we host it?
Detroit just won. Just won, so we would go to Detroit in the second round.
Oh, we don't have.
I think Detroit could be a first round exit, possibly, just because they have no experience. They're going to be home for the first time. I think they're a good team, but Jared Goff in the playoffs, I don't know. It would just scare me if I was a Lions fan, and then especially if the Rams come in there with Stafford coming back to play the Rams, that would be awesome. But
that would be cool.
It's just I don't know. It's gonna be super interesting to see how these playoffs turn out. And I mean, let's all hope they can just flip. Let's just hope that they're the 2022 Phillies where they stumble into the playoffs, they barely make it, and then for somehow, some way, they flip that switch and they go on a run. But
well, I mean, that Phillies team had heart, and they were like, they were for this Eagles team has no heart. They're not connected. I mean, it's just so it is what it is. We'll see what happens. Thank you everybody for watching. Where's the music? Thank you everybody for watching. This might be the last one of these we do in 2024. At least it might be the last one for Sam. We'll see what happens next week. Thank you everybody for watching. Make sure to like and subscribe on YouTube. Follow us on Twitter/X, Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, Threads. Thank you to SeatGeek for sponsoring. Thank you to Foco for sponsoring. Thank you to Gamblers R Us Podcast. Check PhillySportsReports.com after the game for hopefully some sort of positive recap written by Sam Hine, and check tomorrow for my observations. Thank you to everybody for watching. Go Birds, I guess.
Go Birds.